Thomas. I hope you're having a wonderful Thanksgiving weekend. Um, I thought that I would create a slideshow just because I found that there was a lot of material in Pajaris's article that could be a little bit overwhelming. Um, so if you're anything like me and you learn best visually, then I'm hoping that the slideshow might help clarify some of that information and give you a better sense of what Pajaris was talking about. I decided to focus my final composition on the relationship between writing and self-efficacy. So I used Pajaris's self-efficacy beliefs, motivation and achievement in writing a review of the literature as one of my main articles. I wanted to go out of my comfort zone for this final composition, so my plan is to write a short story in sort of half stream of consciousness, half third-person narrative form. And somehow I'll try to figure out how to integrate all of this information regarding self-efficacy. So fingers crossed, I hope it goes well. But I hope that you will find my summary and analysis of this article somewhat interesting and informative. So in the slideshow, I separated the content into 5 sections, which is general information on SE, and how it relates to motivational constructs and how those constructs relate to writing. Then I go into strategies to improve writing SE. I end the presentation with some questions, and then I also include some sources of other research that I did for the strategy section. But before I go into the content, I wanted to highlight some short forms that you might see throughout the presentation. SE is pretty much short form for self-efficacy. SR is short form for self-regulation. And SA is short form for self-assessment. I'm not going to go into general information and the other motivational constructs, just primarily for the sake of time. I did record this quite a number of times, and I have a 15-minute limit on the Screencastify app that I'm using. So I'm just going to focus on the strategies because these are some of the strategies that I think are really important to use in the classroom, and it's something that I wanted to include in my final composition as well. So that's what I'm going to focus on. There's a few strategies I wanted to go over, which are the power of choice and control, the power of modeling, the power of peer modeling, the power of self-reflection, the power of imagination, and the power of delayed gratification. So the first one I wanted to go over is the power of choice and control. Pajaris explains that our perceptions become our reality. And just as our perceptions become our reality, our choices determine our experiences. I'm definitely an advocate for student choice when it comes to writing assignments. I not only find that the quality of their work increases, but I find that students are way more engaged in the process, and they're much more excited to learn to write because they're writing about something that they enjoy and that they're passionate about. And I do notice that students see difficult tasks as challenges rather than threats to be avoided. And this is, I do think that the choice increases their SE skills as well as their SR skills just because they are more engaged, they're more passionate about the topic, and overall they just have fun with it. Sorry about that, when they are when they're getting to choose their own topics. The next strategy is the power of modeling. So modeling not only provides a social standard, but it provides a standard of proficiency and accomplishment. Even though strategies like choice put students at the center of their learning, modeling also emphasizes the role of the educator and how crucial they are to the success of their students in regards to writing. Usher and Pajaris, I think in their article, they say that the educator should also be a relatable model because students learn best when they can relate to the person they're comparing themselves to. If you look at Pajaris's article, he mentions that social comparisons play a key role in increasing or decreasing SE. And that's why Pajaris mentions that the educators should be relatable. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about is how we need to model with intention. In other modules, I believe that we were talking about intentional teaching, explicit teaching rather than implicit teaching, and we need to teach our students to value writing, and I think that is very, very crucial. So Pajuris concludes that as a student moves on from grade to grade, there's a decrease in confidence of writing skills. He concludes that confidence in writing isn't nurtured even when the skills themselves are being developed. So they don't have confidence even though they have the ability to write. And he says this is ironic because the vast majority of students begin school believing they can write. And that's why I say that we need to explicitly teach our students and nurture their skills in order to increase their confidence. It needs to be explicitly taught to students rather than just implicitly taught. So not only should we teach students to value writing, but the way that we can do that through modeling is to show that we value writing by writing. And I think that the writer's workshop was also talking about that too. I mentioned that SE is all about social comparisons. And so peer modeling is really crucial because SE levels are developed by comparing with other peers. I mentioned that there's no inherent meaning of an A unless compared with their peers. So if everyone is receiving an A and I receive a B, then I'm going to see that B as a failure rather than a success. Whereas if all of my peers receive C's, I receive a B, then I'm going to see that B as successful. And so peer modeling is really, really important. So I think that in order to do this, peers should be in conversation with each other. They need to learn to foster an environment that encourages success and inclusivity. They should be talking positively to each other. One way that I like to do this in writing is for peer edits. So students can edit each other's work. They provide some strengths, areas, improvements, and I find that students are really engaged with this and they're very willing to help each other out. The next one that I talk about is the power of self-reflection or self-assessment. When you practice self-reflecting, you're learning to determine your strengths and weaknesses accurately and then identifying any sort of bias that might be present. This relates to self-efficacy because you definitely need to self-assess accurately because SE, you need to also have accurate SE. You shouldn't have an overly heightened sense of confidence, right? That's not going to benefit you. So you should have a somewhat accurate sense of confidence as well. For example, if a student's very confident in their abilities, but then the outcome doesn't match his perceptions, then their confidence is just an over-heightened sense of confidence, and it's not going to help them improve anything. It could actually be very detrimental to their writing skills. It could be a barrier to achievement. So we need to be able to assess ourselves, identify any biases, and be able to accurately see ourselves a little bit better. This slideshow, this is a link to a slideshow over here, and it's pretty much another Google Slides document. I took a course over the summer, and I created a virtual course about learning skills. And the first lesson that I included was about knowing yourself and self-reflecting. So I'm not going to go to the slideshow right now just for the sake of time, but I think that it could really help your students understand how they could go about assessing themselves and knowing themselves a little bit more. The next one is the power of imagination. It's not in the sense of creativity, but I talk about imagination more as cognitive self-modeling. Usher and Pajer says it's the visualization of one's self-coping in diverse situations and under challenging circumstances. So it's about imagining yourself as successful because your preconceptions lead to your predispositions. An example of this is when coaches train their athletes to picture finishing first, or picture yourself crossing the finish line. And the reason why they do this is so they're imagining themselves being successful. So when you imagine yourself as successful, then there's a greater chance of you actually being successful. And Pajeris writes that it develops the will and skill, it develops perseverance, determination, and goal-setting abilities. And I do agree with this. I definitely think that their teachers also need to train their students in order to picture themselves getting that outcome that they want. If it's a grade, or if it's a skill that they have to learn, like spelling or sentence structure, or even creative writing, teachers should really be training their students to think a little bit more positively and think about success rather than failure. The next one is called The Power of Delayed Gratification. And I kind of borrow this from Bandura's article, where he says, if people experience only easy successes, they come to expect quick results and are easily discouraged by failure. I don't want to blame technology and this whole idea of how technology gives us immediate gratification, but I do think that it does play some role or some connection, because now people don't have to work so hard for things anymore, such as information, because it's all given to us so easily. I had one experience of a student who on Google Docs, he would be writing and he wouldn't even read the sentence. He would, whenever there was like a red underline, he would just click on it and then wouldn't even think about what that sentence was saying, because sometimes that spell check is incorrect. And he would just automatically assume that that was correct and click on that. So even though I don't want to put all the blame on technology, I definitely think that there is some role to this. One way that you could teach this, we talk about explicit teaching in previous modules, and I do think that we need to explicitly teach students about delayed gratification. They need to know that this thing called delayed gratification exists, and there's issues that arise revolving around technology and immediate gratification. We need to teach students that it's okay to fail sometimes, it's okay to make mistakes, and because it's our perception of failure that determines whether we will actually have failed or not, right? So instead of seeing failure as an end, we should be seeing failure as a stepping stone to success instead. And so those are some of the strategies that I thought about, and I just want to end it with some questions. I didn't really discuss how we should measure bias, but Pajeris also writes that SE beliefs should also be included in the writing outcome. So for example, if you're measuring writing SE of an essay, then the outcome should be an essay to measure one's SE levels and accuracy. But it got me thinking, are grades and scores a good indicator of writing SE beliefs? And I'm talking about this because grades and scores can be biased. It can be related to teacher bias, right? Or an English teacher might not have good expertise in writing in particular. So if it's not a good indicator, then are there any better indicators that are a little bit more accurate? My second question is related to nurturing writing SE beliefs. So how can we do that? Are there any practical strategies that you can use to nurture students' writing self-efficacy inside a classroom setting? And then my last one is on delayed gratification. I talk about explicit teaching, but how can we teach students about delayed gratification for their writing SE beliefs? And these are just some of the sources that I used. I hope you found this presentation to be somewhat informative, and I look forward to hearing from you.